Good morning, everyone. My voice is really struggling today, and so we are not having regular class today. Today is Wednesday, April 1st. This is not an April Fool's joke. In place of class, I'm going to go through a few things from today's slides. After that, you should spend whatever time is remaining for class time working on your own Project 3. So for housekeeping, you all received feedback on your project proposal either Monday night or Tuesday morning. If you have not opened and read that feedback, you absolutely need to do that now. If your feedback required a new proposal or an email response, please be sure you've emailed that to me by the end of today, Wednesday, April 1st. Next, you received a link to your digital folder. I sent that out on Tuesday, yesterday. That digital folder is where you're going to put whatever finalized 7 scholarly sources that you decide on for this project. See the assignment sheet for how to include the full text of each of those sources, and don't forget to name them using logical file naming conventions. Let's see, you should see the schedule for when you have to have your 7 sources finalized. Last housekeeping item is just to say we're getting close to the 2-week mark of 2 weeks from when you turn in your project 2. So I will have feedback posted on project 2 as close to that 2-week deadline as I possibly can. So you can look for that soon. So on the agenda for today, when you look at the slides, you'll see that we have several things to cover. Because my voice is struggling quite a bit, I'm not going to cover all of these in much depth, but I do want you to read all these slides, please. So where we're at in this project, once your proposal has been approved, you're moving on to secondary research. So you should be carrying out all of those many skills that we learned last time for how to find, how to figure out keywords for your topic and your field, how to start using search strategies, and evaluating the sources that you locate. So you're moving through a process of looking at many potential sources, looking more closely at promising sources, and then selecting finalized sources that you will fully read and annotate. And those are the ones that will go into your digital folder. So the next thing that we're moving toward is the, eventually you'll be moving into the writing phase. And so that's what I'm going to talk a little bit more about now. Oh, on slide 5, I have an illustration for you of why it is so important to carefully evaluate the sources that you locate. So I did a test run of this. So I did a search of one of the library's databases, and I used 2 search terms that I thought would be kind of like a topic everybody would be interested in. The cost of college in the field of education. What have scholars had to say about that topic? And I did the thing I've told you to do, which is to check the peer review box to narrow down my results. What I'm going to show you next are 2 different sources that came up. Slide 7 has source 1, and slide 8 has source 2. So when you come to the slides today and click each of those sources, the question that you see on the screen here is this source scholarly peer-reviewed? Meaning, does it fit the criteria for our assignment? So I walk you through the steps that you should take to try to figure this out based on what we learned last time. So actually looking at the website for the journal, looking for descriptions of their peer review process, and also looking at the source itself, its length, its author, and its use of sources. Now, if we were in class together, I would have us actually do this together and spend quite a bit of time on it. When you look at each of these sources, what we would eventually find is that source 2 fits our assignment criteria Um, oh, I'm so sorry. That's source one, should be source one fits our assignment criteria, and source two does not. Let me fix that to clear up that confusion. There we go. So when you look at source two, it seems like it would be a scholarly article, but as you look more closely at it, you'll notice that when you look at the text itself, there's a piece of writing at the top that says teaching note above the article's title. And when you Google the journal, Radical Teacher is the journal for source two, and you look at their website, you look at their about page, it explains that teaching notes are not peer reviewed. We also notice other things like it's a very short, it's lacking of scholarly sources. So all of those things would tell us that this source two is not scholarly, even though it came up with a search where I had checked the scholarly or peer-reviewed box. So that's just an example of why it is so crucial for you to look carefully at the sources that you're considering. Last time we talked about finding connections between sources. Looking within the source to figure out what has come before the source for who they're citing, and then using Google Scholar. And I showed you last time how to check, how to click the cited by link in Google Scholar to see who all has cited the source since it was published. There's a couple other tools on slide 11 that I wanted to show you, Litmaps and Connected Papers. This is a screenshot from Connected Papers. What I did on this website was I put in a specific book title. It's the one up here that says Mouse Morality, the Rhetoric of Disney Animated Film. And what Connected Papers will actually show me is who has cited the source since then. And it's using these nodes where the size of the node indicates how many sources have cited that source. So the bigger the circle, the more people have cited it. So this can be a useful tool for your project to help you start to find additional sources. So I wanted to show that to you. You can play around with those on your own. That said, there are a lot of technology challenges with this and other tools. So in the reading that you did last time, um, I wanted to just encourage you to be really careful with AI usage. Now, our assignment does not allow any AI usage whatsoever for this project. None. However, I recognize you might be in other classes where your instructor has allowed it. And so I put a link on slide 14 that talks about using generative AI for research. And there's so many caveats here because you have to know how generative AI works and the limitations of it. So because of my voice, I'm not going to get into these too much, but essentially, you have to be super careful because a generative large language model is just predicting what the word should be. It's not actually reading sources. It's not actually able to accurately summarize them. So yeah, there can be lots of inaccuracies with generative AI. What about other tech tools? Last week, or no, on Monday, I said that it's okay for you to use citation managers. Maybe that was last week. I can't remember. I'm sick. Like Zotero or EndNote, but it's still really important to check their output. But what about citation generators like EasyBib or how like even Purdue OWL has a little text box that's like put in your source and we'll cite it for you. Well, I have a resource here about using citation generators responsibly because again, you have to be really careful to check the output. If it, you're kind of the one that's great is on the hook if it cites something incorrectly. So you do need to check it against other tools or other resources, I mean, to make sure it's correct. Now, what about those visualization tools that I mentioned just a second ago, like Connected Papers or Litmaps? Um, with these tools, recognize that they can help you see connections, but you can't have them just do the work for you. Our assignment, our project three, is about learning to investigate a scholarly conversation. And if you're not actually doing that, then you're not fulfilling the goals of this assignment and this course. So I urge a lot of caution with that. So yeah, next we're moving into the writing phase. So for today, talking just a little bit about the annotated bibliography. This is our second genre of academic writing. Our first was proposals. The purpose of an annotated bib is to help a person organize, keep track of, and even evaluate their sources. So there are two pieces to an annotated bib typically. There's an entry for each source where it's a works cited page entry, but then instead of just immediately going to the next works cited entry, there's a detailed annotation beneath each source. Now, for our particular assignment, when you look at the assignment sheet, you'll see that our works cited entries have to be an MLA 9th edition. So go back to your project one feedback where you had to write your works cited entries for your two texts and see what feedback did I give you on that? What things did you do correctly? What things do you still need to work on? A couple other resources, including today's reading. These talk generally about annotated bibs, but remember that our assignment has particular specifications. So you'll need to read our assignment sheet very, very closely. And of course, I don't have our actual assignment sheet pulled up, so let me pull that up for you. Grabbing our assignment sheet. I want to show you the section about the annotated bibliography, and you'll need to come and read this on your own more fully. Everything's taken a minute to load, y'all. So in the writing phase, there's a section about the annotated bibliography and the synthesis. So you'll see writing your works cited entries and writing the annotations. So for every single source, there are 6 things that you have to include beneath the source. So read through these very carefully. There's also an optional number 7 where if you really feel like you, although it was a finalized source, where you thought it was a good fit, if as you get further along you realize it was not a good fit, you can do this addendum option where you explain why it was not a great choice. Like if, for example, as you looked more closely and really, really went into it, you realized the source was not actually in the field that you're investigating. This gives you an option to explain that without having to find another source to replace it with. However, you should not be using this option for all of your sources. This should be used maybe only for a maximum of 1 or 2 at the most. But that's an option that you have. All right, so it talks about the formatting to use for the annotated bib as well, which I'm skipping over because my voice is killing me here. All right, jumping ahead a little bit. I put some recommendations for how to write your works cited entries correctly, some resources on slide 20, and then on slide 21, the actual process that I recommend to students. I would just personally, I would skip the citation generator altogether and I would just write the works cited entry myself. It's going to be quicker because you have to check what the generator gives you anyway. Figure out what kind of source you have, and then go to the Purdue OWL website and look at all of those works cited page sections. Find the source type and then follow the template. And again, make sure you go back to my feedback on your Project 1 works cited page. open that back up and take a look at what things you did well and what you need to work on. So yeah, look at what it says to do for the annotations. The other thing that you're doing in the same document as your annotated bib is that every student eventually has to write a synthesis. So what does the assignment sheet say about this? So the synthesis is an overall explanation, multi-paragraphs, of what you discovered about the conversation surrounding your topic in this field. This can include a lot of different things, but you need at least 4 to 6 points. So 4 to 6 paragraphs is what that's going to translate to about what you learned about your topic. Now, you're going to need to use pie structure for this. So for today, you did a reading that reminded you about how pie structure works. It means that you begin each paragraph with your point. You don't begin each paragraph with a source. Instead, you begin with the point you want to make about the conversation. Then you introduce a source and give quotations and paraphrases from it. And then you explain how they show that your point is true. And you'll just repeat that pattern for every single one of those 4 to 6 points in your synthesis. On slide 27, I copied in again for you the list of examples I gave you last week of what this will entail figuring out. So your project is not going to answer all these things, but these are the types of things that you could answer in each one of your 4 to 6 synthesis paragraphs. Okay. For instance, as you read all of your finalized sources, is there a particular research method that's very common to be used? That would be a great example of one paragraph point that you could make. And then you give examples from your sources to illustrate that. Now, next time, I'm going to talk more about how you're going to have to bring in actual quotes and paraphrases into your synthesis to show that the claims that you're making, the points you're giving, are actually true. So we'll do that next time. Now, if we were in class, I was going to have us look at an extended example together. So the place to get this example is in our student sample projects. So I put a link to that on slide 29. The one I was going to have us look at together is student six, not sample six, student six. So on your own, you're welcome to take a look at this and ask yourself, what does this student do well with their synthesis? Are they following pie structure? Where can they improve it? Where can they give clearer points? Where can they more fully explain the evidence, for instance? Now, remember that the assignment sheet changes every year, and so the student six may have been asked to do something slightly differently, but it can give you a sense of how well they did to some degree. For the remainder of class, this is work time. You should use this time to continue locating your sources. If your project proposal has not been approved, you need to get the revised stuff sent to me today, by the end of today, absolutely. And then proceed once you have approval with using those search strategies we covered last time, moving from potential to promising to finalized sources. And remember, scholarly books, chapters in scholarly books, and scholarly articles. If you've not yet gone to the library to look for the section of the stacks about your topic, you need to do that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I'm not holding office hours today because of my voice. However, if you have any questions, please send me an email, and I'm absolutely happy to schedule a meeting with you for another day. Thank you very much.